Hey guys, Joe of the Joe Madden Sports Show here, joined by Tim Murray of Veasan. Tim, how's the day treating you?
Cannot complain. Things are going well. We are ramping up for bowl season for nerds like myself in college football, but one more regular season game to go. But no, it's good to join you.
Yeah, it's exciting to have you here. Army and Navy, we have to talk that total, Tim, before we move on to bowl season. Who
There
are
you
you
go.
got? I can't see it
I'm
coming
with
right now.
Navy here, so
Rolling
a
with
little.
Navy.
I'm a little, a little bit of a homer pick. I was fortunate enough to be on their broadcast team for 3 years when I lived back east. So I am a bit of a homer here. We'll get to the total. I know you asked about that here in a moment. It's been interesting to see this line. It's been on the move in
Yeah.
favor of Navy. Earlier this week on VSiN Primetime, I like Navy, and they were at a pick, so I grabbed it at a pick. I did not think we would see the movement where it sits right now at some shops as high as 3 in favor of the midshipman. I mean, you think back to this summer and Army was Army was -10, I beg your
Yeah.
pardon, in the look ahead market, in the game of the year market. So you've seen a little bit of market correction, right? With Navy, I think playing better than anticipated. Army maybe playing a little bit down. You look at the schedule strength that these two teams have, Navy playing in the American Athletic Conference, having a non-conference tilt with Notre Dame in November, beating UCF. And then you look at Army, one of the weakest schedules in all of college football. So I think that's why you're seeing the market movement. As for the total, it's unbelievable, right? 16 consecutive years, this has gone under. But because of that, odds makers are no dummies, and they have moved this thing to 32 and a half. So if you want to play the under, good luck. I will be staying off the total in this one. It just feels like maybe it is finally at the right point, but I'm not brave enough to play it over in this one.
Well, especially when we know both of these teams, although they run that ball, they can put these points on the board fast. So it is going to be a crazy game. Best of luck to Navy for you. Let's jump into some bowl predictions. You guys just dropped your guide. Where can people find it?
Yeah, Vsin.com/subscribe. Great stuff there from a lot of my colleagues, including the one and only Brent Musburger with his bowl selections. Steve Makinen, Adam Burke, Josh Applebaum all did a really nice job on our guide. And then, on our website, vsin.com, we'll have updates on all of these bowl games. We're not going to do our in-depth previews until about 72 hours out of each game, just because of the nature of bowl season right now, with the portal being what it is and opt-outs. So we're going to take our time with getting those in-depth previews out. But the guide is out with some good statistical analysis. And, and certainly something that I know a lot of people are interested in. And my colleague, Adam Burke, did a nice job on it. Those confidence pick pools, right? With no spreads, who to put a lot of points on if you're putting those confidence picks out there. So, yeah, certainly worth a read. Some really interesting stuff in there when it comes to these bowl games.
Absolutely. And some great strategies going into them. Do you have any early strategies that you can let us know of?
Yeah, I think, we're at the point too where it's like, think about motivation and, what teams are going to be motivated. And we all kind of play a little bit of, a little bit of psychologist here, and a team that I think is going to be really raring to go. And we talked about it on my podcast, the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast, a little shameless plug there.
I love it.
I think Fresno State is a team that, an opportunity to play a Power 5 team, which is not obscure for them. They played USC, they played Oregon State this year, but it's, Jake Hayner's final game. And then you look at Washington State as a team that is one that is, in the first full year of their head coach. However, they've had a couple opt-outs. Their top 2 leading receivers have hit the transfer portal. One of their best defensive players has hit the portal as well. The defensive coordinator is headed out. And now you're starting to see some significant line movement towards Fresno State here. So that was one of my first bets. Very few bowl games right now have a group of 5 versus a Power 5 team. And more often than not, not say exclusively, but more often than not, we saw it last year in this bowl game. The group of 5 team is incredibly motivated to play in this game. And that's what we saw with Utah State last year, taking down Oregon State in rather, handily fashion. So that's one game that I kept an eye on and played. Another game, speaking of service academies, and I've, a lot of people that I respect have played this game, and that's why the 7 is gone. Air Force taking on Baylor. Baylor's a team that won the Big 12 last year in incredible fashion, right, with that goal line stand against Oklahoma State. They go to the Sugar Bowl and they beat Ole Miss. And now you're playing a pre-Christmas bowl game in the state of Texas, which is certainly beneficial. But look, if you're laying points against the service academy in the bowl season, I never like to say the word blind play because that's not the best way to make money. But when you're taking points with the service academy in a bowl game in this particular spot, you can find some 6.5s out there with Air Force. I would look towards the Falcons in this spot on December 23rd. And then one other quick one before we kind of get into the bigger bowl games. I do like Duke. This is a flip of, Group of 5 versus Power 5, because Duke is a Power 5 program and Central Florida is a Group of 5 program. But I just think about where these teams have been, right? Central Florida was playing for an opportunity to go to a New Year's Six bowl game. And now, no knock to my old neck of the woods, Annapolis, Maryland, but UCF is going to a place that they've played regular season games before at the Naval Academy. And Duke is in the first year of a new head coach in Mike Elko. They have exceeded expectations. Not many people expected to see the Blue Devils in a bowl game. So I fully anticipate on December 28th in a Military Bowl to see a really, amped up Duke team and motivation more often than not, almost more than power ratings, during the regular season. Motivation to me is one of the key factors. So those are 3 early plays that I've made: Fresno State, Air Force plus the points, and then Duke against UCF in the Military Bowl.
Great look at that motivation. I love your angles there. Looking at head coaches, how important is experience of head coaches? And then we know we have some coaches in transition leaving. Interesting matchup between Cincinnati and Louisville. We know Louisville's coach will be with Cincinnati. What are your takes on that? And then the head coach experience.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I think Cincinnati and Louisville, I'll say this, that is one bowl game. There'll be a couple. Look, don't bet every bowl game. How about that? Let's start
Great
with
advice. Yeah.
let's start with that. Unless you're, in a pick'em pool where you have to. This would be a game that I would just stay away from, because I think you can make a case for both sides to be motivated. Obviously, the very unique circumstances you alluded to, where Louisville's coach, Scott Satterfield, left to go to Cincinnati. I think, if anything, maybe you see Louisville a little bit more motivated. But the question that I wonder in this one is the status of Malik Cunningham. Is Malik Cunningham, the quarterback of Louisville, going to play this game? They just lost their offensive coordinator to Lance Taylor. He's now the head coach of Western Michigan. So I just don't know what to expect from Louisville. Obviously, Cincinnati is in a situation where, they've got a new head coach in Scott Satterfield. Their head coach, Luke Fickell, left to go to Wisconsin, brought a lot of the staff with them. So that is certainly one bowl game that I'm probably going to stay away from. Not a whole lot of intrigue there. But yeah, you look around at some of the coaching movements that we've seen, Liberty playing in their bowl game. What do we expect from the Flames taking on, Toledo, a team that just won the MAC? And you've seen the market move against Liberty quite a bit, right? Toledo opened around a 1-2 point favorite, and now they're a 5-point favorite. I would be very surprised to see a motivated Liberty team here in the Boca Raton Bowl. Toledo hasn't won a bowl game in quite some time. Opt-outs, who is opting out, right? And I'm sure that's something we can get into. But you look at one of the earlier bowl games, the New Orleans Bowl. Western Kentucky will be without their starting quarterback. He has hit the transfer portal, Austin Reed. So, South Alabama, a program that has never won a bowl game in school history, you would think the motivation is incredibly high for them to go to the Superdome and take care of business. Well, then you look at Western Kentucky, they don't have their starting quarterback. So what do we expect from them? How big is that drop off? And that's where you're seeing the odds makers trying to guess of how big of a drop off it will be when you have some opt outs.
Yeah, definitely so many players in the transfer protocol. Right now, it's hard in the portal. Sorry, it's really hard to look at really far ahead in these bowl games. But if there's one in particular that you have circled twice, either for watching purposes or for betting purposes, which one is it?
Hard to narrow them down because there's so many, interesting different, facets to these games. One game that I'm really excited to watch is the Alamo Bowl. This game is Washington against Texas. Right now, Texas is a 6-point favorite. I anticipate Washington to gravitate and grab some attention. But this is a game for the most part. When you look at a non-New Year's Six, non-playoff type of game, that I think the motivation is going to be pretty high on both sides. You're looking at year 2 of Steve Sarkisian, year 1 of Quinn Ewers being the starting quarterback. Bijan Robinson, I would fully anticipate to opt out of this game, the Texas running back. But, if people have watched Texas this year, they've got plenty of talent, behind him. And then Michael Penix Jr. Announced to the team that he's coming back for a 6th season for next year. So initially, I thought Washington, remember this, Washington was a USC win away from going to the Rose Bowl, and their consolation prize, because Utah won that game, is going to the Alamo Bowl. But I think this is a Washington team, year 1 of Kalen DeBoer there in Seattle. I think they're going to be incredibly motivated. So that's going to be really, really fun game to watch December 29th. So certainly one for intrigue there. From personal purposes, as people might see, I am a Notre Dame fan. So I'm fascinated to see what the Irish will do in their first bowl game under a full season of Marcus Freeman. The market has moved steadily against them, understandably so. When you look at Michael Mayer, All-American tight end, Isaiah Foskey, All-American defensive end, both opting out of this game to go to the pros, and then Drew Pine, their starting quarterback. And on the other side of the coin, you look at South Carolina. South Carolina is a team that, ended the season on an incredible high note, beating both Clemson in the regular season finale and snapping that losing streak against their in-state rival, and then also putting up 63 points against Tennessee, essentially eliminating the Volunteers from the playoff. Spencer Rattler has maybe played to his capabilities finally in those final 2 games. South Carolina's had a couple opt-outs as well. So I'm intrigued to see, that game for sure. And then the final one to note is Tulane USC. Now, my colleague, Sean King on VSiN Primetime went to Tulane. So obviously, he wants to see his alma mater play well. But another situation, right, where you get this group of 5 team against this Power 5 team, and USC's in the first year of Lincoln Riley, but the motivation, man, it's got to be sucked out, right? Because USC was this close away for playing for a national championship or an opportunity at a national championship. And then they lose to Utah. Caleb Williams is all sorts of banged up. And, I always say this, the line sometimes tells a story. The line is telling us a story here, right? Because this line has moved and it's around a pick. And you would think just normal, power ratings would have this game in the 5 to 6 range. But I'd be very curious to see Caleb Williams, whether or not he plays in this game. He can't opt out. He's got to play another season of college football next year, but he's dealing with that injury. I wonder if Lincoln Riley says, you know what, let's just park it for the rest of the year and look ahead to next year. So, those are some bowl games that really fascinate me when you look at non-playoff games.
Yeah, great games there, and all the best to your Notre Dame team. Any thought on Caleb Williams for the Heisman?
Yeah, I think he's a lock to win the Heisman Trophy. Look, we've had some sensational seasons from Max Duggan from TCU. When you watched him play in the Big 12 championship, despite it being a loss, I mean, my goodness, that guy put everything on the line for TCU. But, for me, Caleb Williams, if you look at the big moments of the season, maybe outside of the second half of the Utah game when he was dealing with that injury, he rose to the occasion, right? He played exceptionally well against Notre Dame, ran in 3 touchdowns, and really seemed like, the best player in the country in that game on a big stage, prime time, with an opportunity still at the time to go to the college football playoff. The week prior against UCLA, he was phenomenal. in a head-to-head battle against an arch rival there. And then even earlier in the season in a losing effort against Utah on the road, I mean, you couldn't put anything on him. I mean, the only reason Utah won that game was because they went for 2 because they didn't want to see Caleb Williams back on the field. So,
Exactly.
Caleb Williams, for me being from the Washington, D.C. area, pretty cool to see a kid who grew up in that D.C. area, went to Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C., going to win the Heisman Trophy. But, over the year, we were trying to wonder, who's it going to be? Is it going to be C.J. Stroud? Is it, could a Blake Corum win it? Hendon Hooker, from Tennessee. But at the end of the day, you got to tip your cap. Caleb Williams, in my eyes, was the best player in the country this year, and will be raising some hardware on Saturday there in New York City.
Yeah, that's the way I definitely see it going as well. Tim, I want to thank you so much for joining me here on the Joe Madden Sports Podcast. Can you tell everyone where to find yourself, where to get the betting guide, and when to catch you on VSiN?
Yeah, absolutely. The betting guide, go to vsin.com/subscribe. I know we're running all sorts of deals as the football season continues. As for me, myself and Sean King, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer quarterback and Tulane Green Wave QB, myself and him, 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern each and every weekday. And then if you really want a little more college football in your life, the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. We're getting ready. Next week, we'll have our first set of bowl previews, and we'll have about 3 or 4 episodes all throughout the bowl season. So we had a great regular season. Hopefully, we can keep it rolling into bowl season. Myself and Matt Humans do the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.
Thank you, Tim. I'm looking forward to checking those out. You guys are always crushing it over there. Make sure you say hi to Sean King for me, and all the best this bowl season.
I will. Appreciate it.
Thank you.